I knew something was off when the janitor handed me a paycheck for $0 and asked if direct deposit to limbo was a new feature. That's when I realized Chad, our walking HR violation of a VP, had finally broken payroll with his new automation revolution. His words, not mine. Meanwhile, I was 6 years deep into cleaning up his messes with a smile so tight it could crack enamel. For context, my name's not important. I was the payroll compliance manager at Midwell Systems, a mid-sized tech firm with a mid-sized ego. My job wasn't glamorous. No one notices the person who makes sure your paycheck has taxes withheld correctly and that the state doesn't come knocking with a baseball bat labeled back wages. I didn't expect applause, but I also didn't expect to be treated like a glorified button pusher by a man who once asked me if Fika was a new social media app. Now, before we go further, real quick, if you're listening and you're one of the 97% who haven't subscribed yet, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It doesn't cost you a dime, and it keeps this team fueled on coffee and spite. All right, let's keep going. So, Chad. Chad was the kind of guy who got promoted because he shared a last name with the CEO and could confidently mispronounce algorithm in board meetings. Overnight, he became our new VP of Ops, without any ops experience, unless you count operating his dad's yacht like it was a bumper boat. One week in, he started spouting off about how we needed to modernize payroll. Cutting costs, he called it. What it really meant was firing the part-time accountant, who actually knew what withholding compliance meant, and installing some half-baked payroll Chad saw in a Facebook ad between protein powder reels. The system was buggy. Contractors got flagged as full-time. Full-timers got no benefits. People were calling me in tears because their pay stubs showed deductions for other and MISC, which is corporate for we don't know where your money went, sorry. Every time I flagged these issues, Chad waved them off like I was being dramatic, said I was resistant to change. I started a folder called Resistant to Chad and filled it with screenshots, dated reports, and forwarded emails he never read. See, here's the thing about working in compliance. We don't yell, we document, we don't make noise, we make paper trails. And mine was starting to look like a damn encyclopedia set. I tried to warn him once, softly. I told him the system was misclassifying employees, and we might be at risk for labor violations. His exact reply, relax. It's not like the IRS is watching, which is exactly the kind of thing someone says right before the IRS starts watching. Then there was the all-hands Zoom, where he proudly told everyone we'd be streamlining administrative roles while staring directly at my camera box like he was waiting for applause. Nobody clapped. A few people looked down. I muted my mic and added that to the list too. But I didn't quit. I knew my job was real. I knew my work kept the ship from capsizing every week. And I knew that one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, Chad would screw up so royally that even his daddy's Rolex wouldn't deflect the fallout. I just didn't think it would come in the form of a reply-all email with the words, "We'll approve your unemployment, sweetheart." It started with the silence. No CCs, no Slack pings. No, can you review this real quick? Just decisions made without me. Chad had begun quietly removing me from the payroll loop like I was a dusty post-it on a cubicle wall. The new system, Hyperpay, because apparently every startup has to sound like a failed energy drink, was going live in chunks. No testing, no approvals, just button smashing and praying to whatever god oversees finance departments. And Hyperpay? It was a Frankenstein's monster duct taped together by code bros who'd clearly never filled out a W-4. It didn't understand shift differentials, treated PTO like it was a suggestion, and defaulted everyone's tax status to single with zero deductions, including a guy with 5 kids and a military spouse. I found that one when his entire check got eaten by federal withholding. He thought the IRS was repossessing his life. I had to walk him through how to file a correction while he chain-smoked on speakerphone in his truck. Then came the real horror. Contractors listed as employees. Employees listed as contractors. Overtime missing. People working 60-hour weeks and getting paid for 38. Sick leave docked from regular hours. Tax forms flagged with blanks where social security numbers should be. At first, I tried to flag it internally. Emailed Chad with subject lines like payroll misclassification, urgent and possible labor law violations, immediate review requested. His replies, noted, or worse, silence. Occasionally, I'd get a Slack message 2 days later with a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up emoji. From a man whose last calendar invite was titled Kedgerator Brainstorm. So I did what every woman in my position has learned to do after years of being told to calm down. I opened a private Google Drive folder, labeled it "Oh Really Chad," and started uploading everything. Screenshots of misclassified roles, PDFs of worker complaints, emails with red flags, backup spreadsheets in case the system magically lost things. Every time he approved something without telling me, I documented it. Every time someone cried in my office about a missing check, I logged the timestamp. And when one of the hourly staff told me he'd stopped clocking in because Hyperpay didn't track breaks right anyway, I added that too. By month's end, my folder had over 80 entries. The kicker? I wasn't even angry yet, not really. What I felt was something colder, sharper, the kind of slow burn fury that sits in your spine and waits. I didn't want to scream. I wanted structure. I wanted to build a case so clean it would leave a paper cut across Chad's perfect, manicured ego. And that opportunity, it came faster than I expected. The first email came from a QA engineer. Hey, my check says I'm a 1099 contractor now. Should I invoice someone? She wasn't the only one. Over the next week, 6 more emails like that. People asking if they were suddenly freelancers. One guy asked if he could deduct his lunch now that he was self-employed. I started responding with a single line. Please forward this concern to VP Chad for clarification. I BCC'd myself every time because the thing about compliance, it's not just about catching the fall. It's about knowing when the rope's already snapped. It hit my inbox like a sucker punch in a parking lot. Subject line, restructuring update please read immediately no greeting. No warning, just a 3-paragraph eulogy written by a man who probably thinks severance is a kind of cheese. Chad's message oozed smarm. As part of our effort to streamline operations and adopt a more agile payroll model, we're sunsetting certain roles that no longer align with our vision for growth. That was his way of saying I was fired. Sunsetted, like I was a screensaver or a toxic sunset over a sewage plant. Then came the final line, nestled between 2 bullet points like it was just another reminder about Casual Friday. Will approve your unemployment, sweetheart, sweetheart, from a man who once asked me if quarterly taxes were like coupons for the government. I sat there, staring at my screen, heart thudding like a loose washer in a dying dryer. The audacity, the disrespect, the sheer Olympic-level stupidity of firing your compliance manager in a reply all. There it was, sent to all departments. Sales, marketing, HR, even our 3 remote engineers in Oregon who probably hadn't seen Chad in months. It was a digital guillotine drop, and he was proud of it. For about 5 seconds, I felt the heat rise, embarrassment, humiliation, rage, but then it just cooled because I realized something. He confirmed in writing in front of the entire company that I was terminated. No NDA, no HR meeting, no exit interview. And with that smug little sweetheart cherry on top, it wasn't just unprofessional, it was actionable. So I took a deep breath, sipped what was left of my now cold coffee, and hit reply all. Thanks for confirming my employment status. Wishing everyone a smooth quarter and close. Then click, I added one more recipient to the CC line, Deborah Simmons, State Labor Department, Senior Audit Investigator. We'd spoken before in hypotheticals. She was sharp, kind, and just nosy enough to care. I didn't write her a note, didn't need to. That email thread, complete with Chad's signature and timestamp, said more than I ever could. I clicked send. No drama, no fireworks, just a quiet whoosh and a little dopamine pop. Across the office, Chad strutted out of his glass fishbowl, grinning like a man who thought he just made a power move. I watched him fist bump one of the sales bros before sauntering toward the break room. Not a care in the world. He had no idea what I'd just done, and that's the beautiful thing about reply alls. Once it's out there, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to everyone, including the state. The Monday after my sunset, I woke up at 7:15 out of habit. My laptop was still on the kitchen counter, unopened like a retired warhorse. For the first time in 6 years, no Slack notifications. No hey quick queue emails. Just silence and the faint hum of my fridge pretending it still mattered. I made coffee slowly, the good kind, not break room sludge. It tasted like freedom. At 8:32 a.m., the first email came in. Subject, hey real quick, who do I talk to about missing overtime? It was from Tanya in DevOps. She'd been working weekend sprints for 2 months straight. Her stub showed straight time pay for 80 hours. She was owed 104. I read the message twice. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the folder Oh Really Chad and started a new subfolder. Phase 2, Fallout. At 9:11, another one. Subject, tax deduction wrong. This time it was Jerry in support. His W-4 status had been changed from married with 2 to single with 0, and half his check vanished into thin air. He was panicking. He had rent due and 2 toddlers. Still, I didn't reply. By 11:40, 4 more had rolled in. Shift leads, QA testers, even someone from HR. I didn't have access anymore, not officially. But I did have the screenshots, the PDFs, the emails, and I knew the system better than anyone still standing. So I drafted an email, not to the company, but to Deborah. Hi again, Deb. Seems my termination has created some growing pains in payroll. Attached are a few samples of misclassification and tax withholding discrepancies I flagged prior to departure. Dates and names are in the file names. Happy to provide more if needed. I attached 6 files. No commentary, no anger, just clean, concise breadcrumbs. Then I hit send. 20 minutes later, she replied, "Thank you, this is extremely helpful. I'll be in touch shortly." And just like that, the game had changed. I wasn't a disgruntled ex-employee. I was a source, a documented, polite, and heavily archived source. Meanwhile, back in the house that Chad broke, the walls were starting to buckle. 2 days later, I got a call from an old colleague who didn't realize I was restructured. She whispered like we were in a mob movie. "Did you see the email from Jacobs Consulting?" Jacobs was one of our two biggest clients. They'd flagged their end-of-year reconciliation because someone on their contract team, through our system, got issued a 1099 and a W-2 for the same calendar year. That's like saying you're a unicorn and a raccoon. It doesn't fly. I nodded into the silence. Yeah, I said, I saw. Another day passed. Then a second client, Mapleridge Group, sent in a formal inquiry. Their workers had received pay stubs with no state withholding. At all, just blank boxes, turns out. Hyperpay had accidentally turned off auto tax settings for everyone in 7 states. And Chad, he was flailing. I could tell by the increasingly desperate replies in a public Slack channel someone screenshotted and sent me. Looking into it. Think it's a form misalignment issue. Might be legacy data corruption. Should resolve after next cycle. Let's not overreact, people. Overreact. We're employees out there holding 2 tax forms and wondering if they'd get audited or sued. But me, I wasn't overreacting at all. I was watering my plants, sipping coffee, watching the cracks widen. I knew where every wire was buried, and now the people who mattered were finally starting to trip over them. And I hadn't raised my voice once. The official request hit Midwell's legal inbox on a Thursday at 10:04 a.m. Preliminary compliance inquiry from the State Labor Auditor's Office. Standard language, formal tone, no accusations, just a request for clarification and records related to employee classification and payroll disbursements over the last 2 quarters. In other words, the first soft knock before the state kicks in the door. Chad, of course, didn't hear the knock, or rather, he did and mistook it for a pizza delivery. He forwarded the notice to legal with a shrug and a note that said, just some boilerplate audit stuff, probably because we're scaling. Scaling, right? What was actually scaling was the number of misfiled tax documents. The mistakes weren't isolated anymore, they were multiplying like unsupervised rabbits in a server closet. I found out the next morning through Jamie in finance. She texted me at 6:38 a.m. from her personal phone, using an encrypted app we'd once joked was for gossip and doomsday prepping. Jamie, is this you? Be honest. Attachment, a screenshot of the state audit email. Me, not me, just procedure. Jamie, well, procedure is causing Chad to sweat through his chair. She followed up with a second screenshot, this time from their internal payroll queue. A batch of 1099s had been sent to 42 full-time employees. Not freelancers, not contractors, not temps. Full-time salaried staff, some with tenure longer than Chad's entire employment history. One of them was the head of IT infrastructure, a man who literally hadn't missed a clock-in since the Obama administration. Apparently, Hyperpay had defaulted everyone to contractor during a silent update meant to increase back-end agility. Translation: they clicked a button they didn't understand, and now employees looked like Uber drivers on paper. Worse, those 1099s had already been mailed. People were getting them at home, confused spouses, accountants asking questions. One guy thought it meant he'd been fired. Another was Googling how to file quarterly taxes on TurboTax and nearly had a breakdown in the copy room. I didn't gloat. I didn't text a single "I told you so." I opened a spreadsheet, added batch 1099 error Feb 14 to the log, and included details Jamie whispered through text. Time of send, system version number, names of affected employees. I saved it, backed it up to an encrypted USB, and then forwarded only the data summary, sanitized and cleaned, to Deborah at the state. Deborah, new development. Seems Hyperpay's classification defaults changed post-update. Affected employees appear to include several salaried roles. Summary attached. Will provide more if needed. Reply came within the hour. This aligns with other data we're seeing. Please continue forwarding as able. Appreciate your discretion. Discretion. Funny word for someone who was fired in a reply all and called sweetheart on the way out. But I was being discreet, methodical. I wasn't airing dirty laundry. I was separating whites from colors and folding it into perfect little evidence piles. Meanwhile, inside the company, panic was simmering. Chad tried damage control. He sent a company-wide message titled Payroll Clarification and System Enhancements, where he assured everyone that minor classification inconsistencies were being addressed and that external audit reviews are a normal part of growth. He ended it with, let's all stay positive and focused. We're building something great. They weren't building anything. They were taping over cracks in a dam with branded Post-its, and I knew exactly how much pressure was building behind it, because this wasn't revenge, it was gravity, and Chad had just cut the rope. The formal inquiry landed like a meteor. Not a whisper, not a warning, just a full-body email from the state auditor's office, addressed to Midwell Systems' legal team, with that beautiful bureaucratic subject line, Notice of Formal Investigation, Wage and Classification Compliance, Ref. ID 409A57. Paragraph 3 was the kill shot. This inquiry has been initiated following a documented complaint from a former employee, supported by multiple substantiating artifacts pertaining to payroll classification errors, wage discrepancies, and withholding failures over the last 2 fiscal quarters. Translation: she had receipts. Now we have them too. For a whole day, the office went into lockdown mode. Legal was summoned. HR pulled logs. Chad, oblivious as a blindfolded piñata, reportedly told the CEO that it was just a random audit, nothing to worry about. He said it with that smug little half-smile he wore like cologne. Then he threw my name under the bus. She's doing this on purpose, he told them. It's malicious compliance. She got fired and now she's stirring the pot. Malicious compliance. From the man who once asked if bonuses were just extra checks you can Venmo. The CEO, Peter Lawton, a man who dressed like every day was a funeral for nuance, called a private leadership meeting. From what Jamie told me later, it wasn't a conversation. It was a confrontation. Peter slammed the printed inquiry packet down on the conference table and said, "Why is this auditor citing your name in connection to state labor violations?" Chad tried to dance around it. Blamed the old system. Blamed the accounting contractor we let go. Blamed legacy workflows, which is corporate for I don't know how anything works, but I like using words that sound smart. Peter wasn't buying it. He reportedly asked, "Didn't she warn you about this before she was let go?" Chad stammered, said something about her tone and how I resisted innovation. That's when Jamie told me Peter looked him dead in the eye and said, "Her tone isn't under state investigation." "You are," while they were arguing, was on the phone with Deborah. She spoke with the dry calm of a woman who'd dismantled embezzlement rings before lunch. "We're officially proceeding. If you're still comfortable participating as a corroborating source, we'll need your documents. Everything with metadata, dates, headers, unaltered. No summaries. I've got a full chain," I said, time-stamped. Categorized, backed up 3 ways. There was a short pause on the line before she said, "You were in compliance before you were in compliance." I smiled, it's a habit. I spent the rest of the day uploading PDFs, XLSX files, exported email chains with clean headers, chat logs, annotated screenshots. Every thread I'd archived, every flag I'd ever raised. I even included my original report draft that Chad deleted from the shared folder without reading, the one titled Payroll Automation Risk Memo, Do Not Implement Yet. The submission window closed with a satisfying click. That folder wasn't just documentation, it was a damn time bomb sealed in a manila envelope. Still, I didn't celebrate, not yet, because I knew how this worked. I'd seen other women throw the first stone only to get buried in NDAs and smear campaigns. The system liked to eat its whistleblowers, then ask why they didn't speak up sooner. But I had 2 things going for me. Every single thing I submitted was verifiably true. Chad was still doing interviews about our streamlined success model on LinkedIn Live. He didn't know it yet, but the floor was already gone beneath him. And the only thing holding him up, my silence, which had just ended. It started with a call to the help desk from a warehouse foreman in Iowa who hadn't been paid in 2 cycles, then 2 more from customer service reps in Arizona. By midweek, the support queue was flooded with panicked employees asking where their direct deposits had gone, why their tax forms didn't match, and whether they were supposed to be receiving severance without actually having been laid off. Payroll vendors were in meltdown. Hyperpay's backend was full of red flags, bounced ACH transfers, and weird error codes like code 312. Classification conflict, undefined pay type. Translation: the system didn't know if it was supposed to treat these people like staff, temps, freelancers, or ghosts. And inside Midwell's glassbox castle, chaos was finally erupting. The CFO, Marjorie, who had been blissfully unaware of the finer details of payroll automation, walked into a 9 a.m. meeting and reportedly asked, "Why are we receiving letters from the state about wage theft?" Chad answered her with a PowerPoint deck titled Process Realignment Timeline. By slide 3, she shut her laptop, stood up, and said, "You're not realigning anything. You're detonating it." Meanwhile, the employees were waking up. 2 developers threatened to sue after realizing their HSA deductions had vanished mid-quarter. A junior marketing analyst posted in the public Slack, "Can someone explain why my W-2 says I live in Nevada? I've never even been to Nevada." An engineer with a diabetic child found out his insurance had lapsed without notice. Word spread fast, real fast. People started talking to each other, to HR, to labor attorneys. And in the middle of all this, Chad did what Chad does best. He panicked in prose. He started an internal email chain titled Urgent Audit Alignment Response, Do Not Share Externally. Classic, in the thread. He asked if someone could backdate the employee status transitions to reflect more contractor-style engagements where possible. He also wrote, God help him, we should align current pay cycles to whatever reflects the cleanest version of the truth. The cleanest version of the truth. That phrase deserves a Pulitzer in bullshit literature. He CC'd the CFO, 2 HR managers, and legal. But the fatal wound came 3 emails down, where Chad attached a spreadsheet titled Reclassification Plan Draft Only. In it, he had manually reassigned employee statuses after they had already been submitted to the state auditor. Worse, the timestamp metadata from the doc showed it had been created that morning. And guess what? Deborah already had the originals. She had the classifications from 2 weeks ago. She had the payment logs. She had the W-2s and 1099s that had already been printed, mailed and probably framed in some accountant's nightmares. By the time that spreadsheet circulated, someone had already leaked it. I didn't leak it. I didn't have to, because my silence was louder than Chad's hysteria. And the beauty of silence? It echoes. It spreads. It makes people start asking questions in rooms Chad can't walk into anymore without sweating through his discount dress shirt. I sat at home that afternoon, watering my monster plant while listening to the low hum of chaos unraveling itself like a ball of office cable, knotted, sticky, and impossible to explain. The news hadn't broken yet. No headlines, no lawsuits filed, no one fired, but it was coming. You could feel it in the air like heat before a thunderstorm. And me? I just added Chad's spreadsheet to my archive, labeled the folder Exhibit D, D for done. It happened during the Q2 strategy meeting, one of those overcatered, ego-choked boardroom affairs where the air smells like stale ambition and overpriced pastries. The CEO, Peter Lawton, was mid-sentence, talking about expansion into the Southwest Territory when his phone buzzed once, then again. Not the usual email chirp, a hard buzz, the kind that bypasses filters and demands attention. He glanced at it, then froze. Everyone at the table noticed. The room, once filled with the soft clinking of coffee spoons and murmured half-agreements, turned still. Peter read the screen. He didn't blink. Then he slowly set the phone on the table, folded his hands like he was preparing to bury a pet, and looked straight across the room at Chad. "Son," he said, voice low and surgical, "you have 5 minutes to explain why our entire payroll system is frozen under state audit." Chad's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a goldfish trying to explain quantum mechanics. His skin went the color of printer paper, his jaw twitched, his hand went to his laptop like it might contain an escape hatch. I think it's a misunderstanding," he stammered. "We're just transitioning systems and there were some legacy data conflicts. Nothing illegal, just procedural friction." Peter didn't blink. He didn't even look at the others in the room. His gaze never left Chad. One of the board members, a gray-haired woman in a burgundy pantsuit who had survived 3 economic crashes and a hostile takeover, tilted her head and asked quietly, almost politely, "Didn't she warn you?" Another board member, this one from finance, cleared his throat and added, "The compliance logs she maintained, they were intact, right? You didn't delete those?" Chad looked at the ceiling like maybe a PowerPoint slide would drop down from heaven and save him. She was difficult, resistant. She didn't support the shift to hyperpay. "That's funny," Peter said, voice still calm, still low, because the auditor just referenced an internal report she submitted before we adopted it. A report outlining almost every issue we're now being investigated for. The silence in that room was radioactive, the kind that peels paint off walls and careers off resumes. Peter reached for his phone again. "Effective immediately," he said, not looking up. "We're freezing all operational decisions related to payroll until further notice. Marjorie will lead compliance restoration. Chad, do not touch another system. Do not respond to any emails without legal present." In fact, he looked at his son like he'd just realized the boy had grown into a liability, not a legacy. "Leave the room." Chad stood. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, might beg. But no words came. He just picked up his tablet, knocking over his water in the process, and left the room with a clumsy nod. The door clicked shut behind him. No one said anything for a long while. Then the woman in the burgundy pantsuit said, "Well, it appears your payroll department was more essential than previously appreciated." Peter didn't reply. He just looked down at the frozen screen of his phone, state seal and all, then exhaled a breath he'd probably been holding since the day he handed Chad the VP title. "Cross town, I was folding laundry when I got the news from Jamie. One line of text, accounts frozen. They called it procedural sabotage. They're eating each other alive." I smiled. It wasn't gloating, it was gravity. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it shows up in a quiet room, wearing a suit and asking simple questions you don't have answers for. The call came on a Tuesday morning, just after sunrise. My dog snored at my feet and the coffee pot burbled like a lazy river. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer anyway. "Hi, this is Deborah Simmons from the state auditor's office." Her voice was warm but precise, like someone who irons her blazers and keeps receipts from 1994 just in case. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "Your documentation was unusually thorough. Honestly, it's rare we get a case so clean." Let the silence sit for a beat. "It was never about revenge," I said. "It was just about doing it right." "Well," she replied, "you did it right enough that our department is considering a rotation of outside consultants to assist with corporate classification audits. If you're open to it, we'd love to talk more. Not now, but when you're ready." I told her I'd think about it. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, letting the steam from my coffee rise into the quiet. Outside, my neighbor was scraping frost off her windshield with a laminated Starbucks rewards card. The world was still turning. Then Jamie sent me the article. "Midwell Systems faces formal state audit following payroll scandal." There it was. Published, time-stamped, crawling its way across news feeds and inboxes like a slow-moving fire. The piece was dry, clinical, just facts. One sentence stood out. "VP of Operations Chad Lawton has been placed on administrative suspension pending the outcome of the investigation." That's corporate speak for he's toast, but legal's still double-checking the thermostat. Even better, the final paragraph quoted an anonymous employee saying staff were demanding clarity, accountability, and back pay. I didn't recognize the voice, but I knew the rhythm. That was a revolt with spreadsheets. The best kind. I didn't celebrate, I didn't toast. I didn't tweet, I just took another sip of coffee. It was dark, hot, and finally didn't taste like despair. Because when they fired me, they thought they were cutting dead weight, trimming fat, streamlining. But I wasn't the fat, I was the spine. I was the quiet stability beneath their chaos. The one who caught mistakes before they metastasized. The one who turned disorganized ambition into functional structure. They thought they could replace me with software and arrogance. Turns out, neither of those write compliance memos at 2 a.m. or catch broken tax logic before it lands you in front of a regulatory board. And as I sat there, watching the fallout from a distance, unbothered, unpaid, and unrepentant, I opened my laptop for the first time in days and typed one last line into the notes I'd kept this whole time. I was just confirming my status. Turns out it's essential. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.